Yeah, I'll just crack on with my story. So I'm going to just talk about my journey along the way, what we've learned, and things what we do better or do again differently. But first of all, I'll start with the history of the farm. So I'm a third generation dairy farmer. In the picture with the cows there is my uncle Richard and my father Graham, the younger chap being my father. And we've been farming at Fen Farm in Suffolk since the 1940s. We're a farm along the valley. We do have a valley in Suffolk as well, and the Waveney Valley. And our farm sort of spreads out onto marshes, really shitty soils, not very good farming land. But our cows have been grazing there ever since my uncle took on the farm in the 1940s. Gradually, as the decades go by, we concentrate more on the cows. We did have pigs, we had some chickens, like a lot of farms, and eventually you find your place. And by the time my uncle passed away in 1981, my father took on the farm and was concentrated on milking cows. Back then we had a herd of British Friesians, all our cows calved in the autumn time, and the system seemed quite simple and worked. And I remember in the 1980s as a child, generally my father was quite happy with the business and how we were going with it. And then we approached the 1990s, the Milk Marketing Board finishes, and then all of a sudden you start to see this influence of breed, which is the Holstein, start to sort of become more common in the dairy industry in the UK. And we were one of those farms which started breeding our cows to Holstein to get more milk. And gradually, I think in the early days it seemed a great idea, but gradually as time went by we started to see things happen. So there was the Milk Marketing Board finished. We see the dairy industry is privatised and the milk processors. All of a sudden we get a good price, but gradually prices slip. We get then a poor price. The Holstein breed becomes much more dominant in the UK. And at this point we see an awful lot of farmers leave the industry, and I think that's through I think it's a lot to do with the type of breed and the way the style the animal was looked after. So for us being a grazing herd, all of a sudden we didn't realize at the time, but bringing in a herd of cows which give a lot of milk, that our shitty pasture land it wasn't the greatest of grazing for these cows. And gradually as we go through the 1990s into the 2000s, the cows they give more and more milk. We then start to keep them in the shed more, use less grazing. On top of that, the supermarkets are looking for more all year round milk consistency. So we find ourselves an all year round calving herd with Holsteins with not the best of sheds to house them in. So going to about 2009 here, this is kind of an important sort of part to our history that we got to a stage, and I remember that was a particularly bad year for milk price. And our vet bills, I think our cows nearly got to 10,000 litres a cow per lactation, and that was the most depressing year of my life. There was we were making no money. There was huge vet bills, and I think it was at that stage. I should, before I mention that, I did at the same point win an award for Farmer of the Future award from the Farmer's Guardian. Ironically, it was my vet what put me in for the award, but it was a combination, strangely, of that sort of having that confidence to go out and feel like you've done potentially could be a good person for the industry, and the frustration of what we currently had. And I for the first time started looking at other other ways of bringing money to the farm. And strangely, our sort of first part of our diversification was these things, chickens. So in 2010, the free-range hen market is doing very well, and it really appeals to me. So me and my father, we go around visiting some free-range hen farmers in the area, and we, just to learn how to go about setting up a free-range hen shed and having these hens going out onto the pasture land where our cows are. And what really, actually, the strange thing about it is that I was more interested. I noticed that a few of these free-range hen farmers had these kind of like little honesty box things going on. Like the one in the picture here it looks like they just took the wire off the rabbit cage or guinea pigs, and literally they just sell the second eggs, the double yolkers, and anything what the egg buyer probably doesn't want, and they're going to pay you down. These guys were putting them in these honesty box systems, and customers were. I was looking at this one particular place we visited. The amount of cars what kept coming up his driveway, stopping, going out, putting a coin in a box, taking the eggs, and off they go again. And I just said to this guy, I go, "Wow, you've got some serious amount of people coming in your yard. How much money do you make, do you mind me asking, in your honesty box?" He said, "Oh, we take about £500 in cash a week through people putting coins in a box." And I thought, why are we not doing that with milk? And it really sort of bugged me. Like, I thought, there must be somebody doing this with milk, but there isn't. And then when you sort of think about it, how the dairy industry has evolved and changed over the decades is that we did actually used to do milk rounds. Dairy farmers used to sell their own milk, and that kind of disappeared through the way the consumer shops, going to supermarkets, lower prices than the doorstep delivery, and all of these things combined with put people away from doing milk rounds, and all of a sudden we're a nation of dairy farmers who sell our milk to milk processors, and we don't do anything else really. And I just went home and I thought, let's just give it a go. We got this garden shed. My wife Dulcie is quite good with a paintbrush. She painted it like a cow, and where our farm is positioned, it's right on the outskirts of our little town called Bungay, and it's in a 30-mile-an-hour zone, right beside the road the farm is. And I just had this feeling that maybe this could be successful. What should we sell? Let's sell raw milk, not pasteurized milk. Why? Because I've got to buy a pasteurizer, but also in the back of my mind was the thought that raw milk tastes really good, and we've got something what other shops cannot get a hold of. And so the thought of selling raw milk, having this funky little shed, and the only other thing which really I noticed at the time, what came to my attention is that I hardly ever go in a supermarket. I'm always working, but when I did, I noticed what milk looked like. It looked so boring. There was nothing interesting about it. You get all of these exciting brands as you head back towards the checkout, and exciting looking packaging which you're going to pick up, and you're going to pay £6 for something which cost ingredient wise 35p, and there you go to the milk and it's boring. There's nothing about it interesting, and all of these sort of thoughts combined, in August 2011 we set up our milk shed. And in it, we just put an honesty box, which was a second-hand fridge from a fish and chip shop. The milk bottles didn't have a sticker on them. They had a luggage tag. I got my Olivetti printer and printed out these stickers, which we stuck on the luggage tag, what we bought off Amazon. The milk looked beautiful. It had the cream on the top. And we did sell some eggs as well. But the first day, we put the honesty box just onto the left-hand side there in the picture, bolted it to the shelf, and we sold all 30 litres. Quite simply, £1 a litre for a 1 litre, £2 for a 2 litre. And we started to have people come back. The sales started to grow. We started to go from 30 litres a day, 50 litres a day, 80 litres a day, 100 litres a day. And every time someone was putting £1 in the box, people were coming back, giving us great feedback. Strangely, people were telling us it was helping with their intolerances, their eczema, their asthma, and all of these things which I wasn't aware of at the time. But for the first time, like in my life, I all of a sudden I got up in the morning with this burning desire that I was doing something, and I felt proud of it. And customers were writing such lovely feedback in the book, and I was more concerned about the 100 litres I was selling in our little shed than the 6,500 litres as I was selling to the milk processor a day. And actually, when you think about the value of what we were getting from our milk, you know, I'm cutting out the haulage, I'm cutting out the milk processor, I'm cutting out the delivery to the supermarket, I'm cutting out the supermarket. All of these people are gone, and I'm just taking all of their margins in this bottle of milk. So simple. It's the milk straight from the cow. It's sold on the same day. There's nothing hard about it, but it tastes so amazing when it's fresh from the cow, and that's why people kept coming back. The margin what we were making from this milk was just over 50p a litre. So when I looked at the time when I was making a penny a litre if I was lucky, then at every 50 litres what I sold to the milk processor, it would only take me 1 litre to sell through my shop to make the same level of profit. So then I started to think, well, to grow my business, if I need to have more milk to make more 1 pence a litre profit, that means I've got to invest in a bigger maize clamp, another John Deere tractor, another person, a bigger milking parlour, or I could just like start selling it through my shed at £1 a litre. So rather than thinking about quantity, I started thinking about quality. Sorry, I lost my trail of thought. So from that point onwards, to me, increasing our cow numbers didn't seem absolutely any point whatsoever. I just needed to increase the litres I sold to other people through myself. Sadly, at this point also, we had a bit of trouble as that we started to have people steal the milk. So unfortunately, the honesty box wasn't as honest as I'd have liked it to be. But we weren't to be beaten, so we looked around for a vending machine. So we're going to put bottles of milk in this vending machine. I've seen them in NHS, hospitals, train stations, that kind of thing. And as we started researching, we found this milk dispenser, which was better than a vending machine because you give your customer a glass bottle and they then fill their own bottle up for you. So I've not only cut out all of the middlemen, but I've even asked the person who's paying me £1 a litre to fill their bottle up. And this bit of kit we bought from Italy, if I just move forward. So milk dispenser machine. So we're the first people in the UK to buy one of these machines and put on farm. And from that machine, we got loads of publicity. It was this, vending machine selling milk, open 24/7, reducing plastic usage. All of these things were like really, important things to discuss. And from that, we then started to get interest from newspapers. So initially, it was local press. And then it got into national sort of Radio 4. I had A.A. Gill from the Sunday Times come and do a story. We're on the front page of the magazine with A.A. Gill. It then got international. The Wall Street Journal, the front page of the Wall Street Journal is a bottle of Fen Farm Dairy raw milk as an interesting little sort of story. And then farming magazines picked the story up. Farmers Guardian, Farmers Weekly run a story on some smart dairy farmer in Suffolk making 50p a litre. And all of a sudden, I start getting phone calls from other dairy farmers interested in buying vending machines where we get them from. So at the point, I'm thinking, well, I'll start selling vending machines. So, so me and Dulcie, my wife, went to Italy, to Venice for a nice weekend, but I didn't mention the bit where there was the vending machine factory just down the road, and we struck up a deal to start importing Italian vending machines into the UK. And from that point onwards, we ended up selling about 50 machines to other dairy farmers, and all of a sudden you start to see this real sort of like surge of raw milk producers in the UK. So at the time, I think there was about 30, 40 raw milk producers, and all of a sudden the Food Standards Agency call it the country file effect, where from the back of country file, all of a sudden we grow in raw milk producers to about 170. And this is just some of the, some of the farmers who've sort of gone on to do their own projects, and and for some of these guys, they've really transformed their businesses and gone on to their own diversifications and different, different things with their farms. So milk is going great, but for me, I know that there's only so far you can go with raw milk. We can only sell it direct. There are strange rules around what you can and can't do with raw milk. So how do I start to use more of my milk, in a different way? Well, the obvious thing in East Anglia is hardly any cheesemakers. So we go on a mission to learn from some of the best cheesemakers in the UK. We visit Lincolnshire Poacher. It's a very similar farm to ours, make cheese on farm. We met Randolph Hodgson, who's the owner of Neal's Yard Dairy, along with Joe Schneider, who makes a raw milk Stilton. And from that journey of seeing like styles of how to produce farmhouse milk into cheese, and what they do, and we started to understand how it would fit with our farm. And the next journey was to Neal's Yard Dairy in London, and we visited the buyer, Bronwyn Percival, and we said, we want to make cheese with our milk. She seemed really interested in that. And as we looked along the counter, there was all of this range of amazing British cheeses, apart from one, what sat in the middle, a big brie, and it was from France, Brie de Meaux, the Donge Brie de Meaux from France. And it really was the odd one out along that counter. So quite simply, we thought, we'll make that cheese because nobody else is making it. So the next step, what we did was we then started to look into how do we discover the recipe to make a French brie? Where do we get the cheese-making cultures, the understanding of the style of building we need to make to create this cheese? And that's when we found this guy here, Ivan Larcher. He's a French cheese consultant. He's looking very French in this photo here with all of his cheese wannabes here, look. And Ivan, I spoke to him, I said, would you be interested in helping us develop this raw milk brie in the UK? And he said, I would. He said, but I'll only work with people who want to make great products. And I go, well, I do want to make a great product. And he said, oh, that's good. He said, you need to have good milk to make good cheese. And then he asked me what breed of cow we had. And I said, well, Holstein. He said, oh, this is not going to work. And I go, oh, right. So what do you mean we need a different cow? He said, yes. He said, you need a cow which produces milk for cheese, not for drinking milk. And I said, well, could you recommend a breed or two we could look at? And he said, yes, they are both French. There is the Montbéliard and the Normandy. So we went on we researched both breeds. And we really liked the Montbéliard, but it was a bit more of a popular breed in France, and I felt like it was a little less risk to our business. So Ivan put us in touch with a Montbéliard broker in France, and the next thing, within 2 months, I told my dad that I'm going to France to buy a herd of Montbéliard, and he thought the vending machine was scary when I told him how much this was going to cost. And so we visited all of these farms, and over 30-odd farms, we brought back 2 lorry loads of cows the Montbéliard. And I really love this breed. It brought back memories of the British Friesian from my childhood. There's a cow with, it's got, you look in the eyes of this cow, it's got determination. She's going to keep going. And so it would be a bit of a more, a better breed for like our beef calves, a better breed for cheese making, but also importantly that we could start using our marshes to their best, use of them grazing again. So all of a sudden, all of these changes are starting to happen on our farm. So once we've discovered our cows, we place our order on these 72 cows. We get to work on converting our old milking parlour. So the top left-hand photo is the same picture of the original photo in the history where you saw my uncle and my dad. That's the same room. So we turn the old milking parlour into a cheese production rooms, and by April 2013 the building is finished. We brought all of this equipment in from France. All I need now is Ivan to come over from France and make cheese with us. He agrees, providing we feed him mixed grill. So in the 3 days he was with us, we fed him mixed grill on 2 nights and sticky pork belly ribs. We found a way to Ivan's heart to how to hold him at the farm. And so we had 3 days of sort of intense cheese making on the farm with Ivan. And sadly, Ivan had to go home back to France. He was worried that they weren't going to let him across the border because of revealing all of the cheese making secrets the French hold dear. Sorry, this is the picture. I should have shown you that. So this is Ivan in the top right-hand corner. And this is the very first day we made cheese. And there's the whey, the curd and the whey separating, ladling it into the hoops. Then you're into salting it, and then finally the mold starts growing. So we make this cheese. It tastes amazing. The first few batches were great, and then gradually consistency started to slip. I'm just going to move to the next photo. This is the final cheese, Baron Bigod, and that's what it looks like once it fully matures and goes all gooey. And I have got a whole 3 kg wheel here. If you can hang on to the end of my talk, there is 3 kgs of brie to eat. So interesting, at this point, I'm just going to mention briefly about the design of the box. And this is actually a really important part to, if you're interested in diversifying or making your own product, is that we were lucky enough to have a friend who worked in marketing and branding in London. And he worked for the likes of Waitrose and a few more companies. And he really loved the idea of us making cheese and wanted to help out for free, just as long as we gave him cheese. And we came about, the style of branding, Baron Bigod, our cheese name, all of the branding and what the image we gave off was sort of learned at that point from Alex, our friend, so that the style of product, the product we make, it's really important that the kind of person what we aim to sell that product to, their image and the way their shops look, the branding, it's all really important, because the type of person who's going to be happy to spend 24 to 40 pound a kilo on our cheese, there is going to be a certain look of the brand, what's going to appeal to them. So we count the original boxes, we actually hand stamped them because we wanted to give the image that it was from a farmer. There was absolutely no point us putting it into a supermarket to compete with Somerset Brie or President Brie. We needed to do something which people were buying into the product because it was from a farm. So if it's from a farm, it's really important that it needs to look like it's made by a farmer. And by hand stamping it and even making it a little bit wonky, it looked like it was real artisan product. So from the cheese, I'm kind of like on fire now, because it's like I just can't believe there's all these exciting things happening on farm. and I just that people start throwing these other ideas at me. Can you do this? Can you do that? And I'm thinking, yes, yes, yes. But the trouble was, I'm running out of hours in the day. But the next thing, what we move into is butter, and this great story of farmhouse butter made in Suffolk. I read this book, the Suffolk Cheese Book by Margaret Knox, and in it says this great story of Suffolk making all this amazing butter, but on the flip side making this terrible cheese from the skim milk known as Suffolk Bang, where dogs would bark at it and you could roll a cannon on it, and the weevils couldn't get into it, so they sold it to the Navy. This story really, I've really found it exciting, and on top of that, our little town Bungay has this monument in the middle of the town called the Butter Cross, where once butter was sold. So we then embark, oh God, heck, the time is running out. I'm going to have to move on quickly. We then embark on this butter journey, and similar to the cheese, we make a cultured butter, a high quality butter to sell into the same sort of shops as we do with our cheese. And then, so just quickly, because I'm running out of time, the things from when we made the products to where we are now, what we had to learn was the actual consistency of the product. So making a cheese consistently good all the time is a really important step to actually growing sales. So we did things like visiting Neil's Yard Dairy monthly to discuss the quality of the cheese and how can we improve it. Invited other cheesemakers who made soft cheeses to our farm to make cheese with us, so we learned together and improving the recipe. And lastly, going to France and on study tours to visit cheesemakers out there. The other side of it, the business, once again, I was just saying that we've got to a point where I'm literally working every hour there is possible in the week. And we then set ourselves on a sort of a learning of business from, we find a business coach, and he starts helping us look at the business from the bottom and building it upwards, and things like recruiting and building a team of people, and systems on the farm, so as more people work on a farm, that we all work in the same way. And then just quickly, influences, finding people who have been there and done that, got the T-shirt in food industry. There's a picture of Rowan Gormley and Naked Wines there with my wife Dulcie. So what's new? We built a bigger building. This has only now just started with the idea of moving to about 100 tons of cheese a year on our farm. Our ultimate goal is to use all our milk. We're setting up a subscription box, Fen Farm and Friends, where we bring in other cheesemakers' cheese and sell it as a subscription box. Launching a yogurt product. This is Skyr, which is skim milk, the other side to the butter. So once again, using a product which is a waste product on a farm. And the only other thing I briefly didn't touch on is that I'm the chairman for the Raw Milk Producers Association. So as raw milk producers in the UK, we've now set up an association, a membership where people can come to learn how to sell raw milk safely and learn from other raw milk producers, because it's important that as raw milk producers, as a whole, as a collective, that we all produce raw milk safely. And just to finish my story, the original vending machine, what we bought, is in the V&A in London. So that's the first one in the UK, and that happens to have got into an exhibition in London. I think it's just still there. So, and that's me all done. Thank you very much.